Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for our latest a round of Scottish gin. And we're very excited to be joined by Ian from the Port of Leith Distillery today. They make Linden Lime gin. So hot off the heels of their Gin Masters Gold, which we can mention to him. We're looking forward to catching up with Ian and seeing what's going on with those guys just now. So on that note, are you there, Ian?
I am. Hello, hello. Talking to you live from the Tower Street Stillhouse in Leith. Yeah, hi guys.
Sounds
Nice to
like a
see you.
busy place.
It is. It's a hub of industry today. We're bottling again. We're bottling 4 days a week at the moment. So there's never a dull moment over here in our beautiful industrial estate.
Brilliant. And yes, you probably heard me mention there. Congratulations on the recent win.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, that was genuinely very exciting for us. I mean, we've been very fortunate awards-wise since we launched, and obviously the bottle itself has got an awful lot of recognition, but there's nothing quite special as getting a gold for the gin itself.
Of course.
It is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole team was pretty excited with that.
It's fair to say it's got that all round, the taste, the look. It's just top notch. So I'm not surprised you're picking up awards, but. So I guess just to give those who don't know or want to know a little bit more about what you guys are all about, how and when did you decide to establish the distillery?
Yes, well, my goodness, we have to go back quite far in time. Well, maybe 7, 8 years, something like that. The company was founded by me and my, one of my best friends, Paddy. We grew up together. I've known him since I was 4, so I'm sick of the sight of him. And we were both kind of grew up in Edinburgh, but ended up in London. And I went in the drinks industry. Paddy became an accountant, and the whole time we were sort of thinking about creating a distillery in Edinburgh. And the focus for us is, was principally whiskey. So we wanted to create a whiskey distillery, and it's just been an incredibly slow burn that we finally managed to get moving in earnest, I guess, probably 4 or 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And anyone who knows anything about whiskey will know it takes forever to make anything happen. And for a long time, in the meantime, the world of gin was just exploding around us. So many exciting new gins emerging all over the place. And we were really kind of shying away from the whole thing, thinking, no, let's just focus on whiskey because gin, I think the rest of the world's got that covered. But as time went on, we began to sort of envisage in our minds something that we could do with gin, because there were so many wild and wonderful flavors emerging, and also, every kind of gin for everybody. I was kind of thinking I'd like actually to go back and have a gin that is sort of just benchmark London Dry, just something that I could say is going back to the essence of what a London Dry gin should be. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we were also, getting so engrossed in the history and heritage of where we are. We were also getting ideas about, the stories that a gin could say and how it could reflect where we're from. And it just sort of emerged, and our confidence with the idea grew. So in the meantime, while we had this sort of really long-term project of the whiskey distillery going on, we decided to get a gin distillery going. And it was about 2 years from inception to getting it up and running.
Wow, even just the gin?
Just the gin, yeah,
right,
yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, in theory, gin you can get, you could have the idea and probably have a distillery up and running in about 6 months. But we took a long time sort of working on the product itself, on the spirit, and also on the look and feel of the brand and the bottle. We decided to make our own bottle, and when you go down that route, time just vanishes into a chasm. So it was a good 24 months, I think, until we finally launched our own gin in November 2018. And here it is, Linden Lime. I guess one of the key things along that journey of creating our gin distillery is we became really good friends with another local producer called Electric Spirit Co. that you guys will know very well. We met James there, and he was operating at the time out of essentially a broom cupboard. I mean, his still house was so small. There's a little attic room in this little business center. And we said to him, look, we're thinking of making a gin ourselves. We've got a bit of investment behind us. We could, help get this bigger facility up and running, and we could share it with you. We could both use the facilities because we won't need it all, you won't need it all. And we sort of forged together what we think is pretty much the only shared distillery in Scotland in this regard. This sort of, well, you guys are the gin cooperative, but there is a kind of a gin cooperative as well.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and I think you're right. I think it is the only truly shared 50-50 sort of shared space, if you like. Obviously, there are certain people who have gin made in other distilleries, but they don't own that or they don't work there. So it is genuinely quite unique. Yeah,
I think it is the only collaborative distillery in Scotland.
Yeah, collaborative's the word. There we go. We're collaborative most of the time.
Yeah.
So possibly, as we found, because two producers working in a space together, it's amazing we don't kill each other quite often. But genuinely, it's from the moment we met James, that relationship just became better and better, and it's been magnificent for both of us. And so with James, we established this place, and actually we worked with him on the original recipe for Linden Lime.
Okay.
And that was sort of taking just a very simple kind of London dry recipe and building upon it, if you like, with many different iterations. And we decided quite early on that with that benchmark London style, the key marriage made in heaven with juniper is citrus, essentially. We're all putting citrus in our gin and tonics, or that was the traditional thing to do. So we wanted to put it in our gin, and we discovered a lot of like beautiful local reasons to do that. Just getting onto the background behind our gin story, Linden Lime, named after James Lind, who was a doctor from Edinburgh, who in the 18th century first discovered that citrus fruit prevents scurvy. He didn't sort of make that conclusion, but he did. He's almost more celebrated for the fact that he conducted what is one of the world's first recorded clinical trials, where he was a surgeon on board a ship called HMS Salisbury, and he split the sailors into 6 groups and gave them each a separate diet, and identified that the ones who had citrus fruits didn't get scurvy. And that was just an incredible thing for the world. And I grew up in Edinburgh, and I never knew that the person who did that came from Edinburgh. And so we thought that's a great story to tell, and a lovely sort of inspiration behind that citrus. Also, Leith, where we're from, is where a guy called Lachlan Rose, basically ships, they had to carry citrus fruits moving forward so that their sailors didn't get scurvy. They would preserve the citrus with alcohol. But Lachlan Rose was a massive killjoy, and he found a way to preserve it with sugar instead, and created Rose's Lime Cordial, which is now a massive global brand owned by Coca-Cola, and that came from Leith as well.
I remember Hannah told me that actually in one of the Q&As we did with you before, and I had no idea that Rose's Cordial was in fact sort of born out of Edinburgh. So that was new to me as well recently. Yeah,
it's pretty extraordinary actually. So the things, I guess, in Scotland in general, we have such heritage. We can't know it all, and it's amazing what you discover when you start opening a few books. But so we took that citrus idea and essentially started introducing lime into the recipe, into the mix. Lime's a tricky one to work with because what we do, in fact, I have here a bold lime because we peel off. Vicky just spent most of yesterday peeling crates and crates of limes, as we have to do quite regularly now. And we take the peel and we put that into the still with the rest of our botanicals. And the peel essentially gives the citrus in the forms of essential oils. And the problem you have there is oils cause what's known as louching in gin. So you end up with like a cloudy gin. And we were really trying to find a way to get the right balance of citrus without bottling a cloudy gin. And that took a lot of work as well. And then we managed to nail that aspect, but we found it was missing something. I came to to this business from 10 years in the wine trade. And in wine, we always talk about the idea of balance in wine. You don't want a wine that's completely dominated by oak or that's not enough acidity or whatever it is. Balance is key. And we wanted to get the same thing with our gin, balance. It's not dominated. So we wanted something to counterbalance that lime with the juniper. And the answer we found was pink peppercorns, just adding a little gentle spice, little earthiness as well to the gin. And all of these things. So when you're using just 3 key botanicals, that balance is so much harder to achieve because there's nothing to hide behind, if you like. So that's one reason I think that the recipe took quite a long time to nail. But we got there in the end. And, James Porteous of Electric Spirit Co., now, I think in the last 12 months, won 3 gold medals from major international awards for his own gin. We couldn't have had a better partner for that. And then, of course, he now focuses on his own company, and we brought in a fantastic distiller called Andy, who was previously working at Edinburgh Gin, who's really taken it on and made it his own as well. So
brilliant.
So that was the evolution of the product itself.
Fantastic.
And I love the fact that you've managed to capture some of the heritage from the local area in Leith into not only the spirit inside the bottle, but also your packaging as well. Because I know there's a little hidden message on the bottom of the bottle as well, is there? A little nod.
Yeah, so I mean, I won't lie. The reason we first came up with this shape is, again, my time in the wine industry. And I always thought to myself, I'd love to put spirits in a wine bottle. No one else is doing that, and it'll look quite distinctive on the shelf. But then, as I got into the local history as well here, I discovered that there was a massive glassmaking industry that used to exist in Leith. And this was because Leith, was Scotland's gateway to the world for most of Scotland's history. And so you'd have wine and spirits, brandy from France, whatever it might be, arriving into the harbour in barrels. And of course, these had to be decanted into bottles. So they were making tens of thousands of bottles in Leith and wine bottles. Yep. So we thought, there we go. That's again telling a story. Again, I grew up in Edinburgh. I never knew that massive industry existed here. So it was another opportunity to tell the story. And we just put a little Easter egg on the base of our bottle, which I guess you can kind of see there, Leith Glassworks, which I think 99% of people who buy this product never even know it's there. But it gives us great satisfaction to know it is. And that sort of inspired the bottle. The problem we had, another thing I was thinking with wine bottles is, well, they make millions of those, so we'll be able to get our bottles really cheap. It'll be fantastic. But I really wanted a very specific shape. And we found the shape in a wine bottle, but we couldn't get it in 70 cl that you need for spirits, because wine bottles are generally made in 75 cl, which is what wine has to be bottled in the EU. And so we looked and we just couldn't find a 70 cl bottle. And eventually we just came to the conclusion where we're going to have to make our own bottle. And as I mentioned earlier, so began. That's when the trouble starts. That's when the trouble starts. But I often think of that moment as pure serendipity. Thank goodness we didn't find an off-the-shelf wine bottle that worked for us, because by creating our own bottle, we'd seen this color of glass elsewhere, and it had a sort of almost looked a little recycled in a way. We discovered this is called off-white glass, and it's what they produce in between doing clear glass and green glass. It's the offcuts, if you like, of the glassmaking process. So we were able to introduce that aspect to it, which I think really sort of enhances and sort of references that sort of the seaport where we are, but also the lime character of it. And of course, we could add a little texture to the bottle as well.
And I mean, color-wise is absolutely beautiful, because actually, no offense, but it almost doesn't do it justice where you holding it up. But when but when the light shines on it, depending on the setting, it can be like aqua blue, it can be like green, it can be off-white, as you say. It's just depending on how you catch, it really is beautiful, that colour.
And I do remember when we came to see you it must have been about 2 years ago, when you had your original orange office shed that you'd mentioned, we got a little sneak peek of the bottle, and it was the 3D printed prototype.
Yeah, that was
one here.
That was it.
And that was back in the day when we were going to call it the antidote.
Oh, okay.
Because lime is the antidote to scurvy. It was really clever. But then it turned out a very big French producer launched a gin called L'Antidote, and we thought they could be lawyers, so we dropped that one in a haste. But we had this for ages. And it's kind of a weird thing, because you're just going, it looks a bit like a skittle, in a bowling alley. It's it's a weird process, sort of creating that packaging and brand, because it takes so long, but it's only really at the very, very end that everything comes together. You get the actual labels printed, you have the actual stopper, you have the glass as it's meant to be, and you finally see it come together. And I was just, for 2 weeks, I couldn't take my eyes off it. I was taking the bottle wherever I went. I'd be at home sitting on the sofa with my wife, just watching TV. I'm just staring at the bottle. There's this little bit in my living room where I could put it underneath a lamp, and so it was getting top lit down through it. And I just kept, it's just so beautiful. And I used to work as obviously I worked in the wine trade, but I also, because you don't make any money in the wine trade, I also worked as a wedding photographer. And so, I did a bit of photography in the past. And this bottle is just so much fun to photograph. It's different wherever you place it. And I mean, you guys have done some beautiful images yourself of it. So it's been lovely from that perspective. So.
Absolutely, No, it helps to be able to be proud of the contents and the packaging, and you have every right to be. So you touched on some of the people. You've mentioned a few names. I think we heard Vicky and Andy. And so who exactly is working in the business now?
Yeah, so we have a team of, I always get this wrong, but I think I think there's 6 of us now.
Okay.
I hope that's right. I really should know this. So there's me, my business partner Paddy. We've got Andy, our distiller, who joined us back in last year at some point. And then we have Hannah, who is she kind of looks after our UK sales, and she's massively overqualified for a job. She's got a degree in physics, and all of them went to Heriot-Watt University, obviously. And Hannah now actually is assisting a bit with production as well. Then our newest recruit is Ranald, who is also currently overseeing bottling operations as well as looking after our export sales. And then Vicky, who's actually been with us from longer than anyone else, because she came on board originally specifically for our whiskey research that we're doing with Heriot-Watt University. But actually with our gin distiller Andy on paternity, Vicky's been running the distillation as well for us lately. So I always say, like, one of the key, if we have any success, it's down to the fact that we have managed to recruit a really excellent team. And it's one of the great advantages of being in Edinburgh. We have Heriot-Watt University on our doorstep, and just more talented graduates than you could shake a gin bottle at. So it's a fantastic place to be in that regard.
Yeah, brilliant. And you touched a bit, Ian, on your transfer partnership with Heriot-Watt. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, going back in time, Paddy and I, as sort of young graduates in Edinburgh, being underpaid and overworked and feeling miserable about life, and we shared a flat for a while. And we'd take turns to buy whatever was an offer, whiskey-wise at Sainsbury's or something, and then started to get really into whiskey. We'd sit there talking about it and started going to tastings together, and we got really, really into it. And in the meantime, I was developing my career in the wine trade, and I was just seeing this mismatch in the way that people talk about whiskey and wine. Whiskey, there was a great kind of focus on efficiency and the casks and stuff like that. And whereas wine, you would never talk about efficiency. You would talk about how inefficient you are, how much time you. And there also seemed so much of the production process of whiskey that people didn't talk about, like the fermentation, what you used to use. And eventually, Paddy and I got so into whiskey that we started experimenting with elements of whiskey production, which is about as much as I can say about that. But and we learned in that actually it is that fermentation bit of whiskey that is by far the most complicated bit. Whiskey is distilled beer, and no one talks of it in that way. Mm-hmm. And so we thought there's got to be some real opportunities to do exciting things with the spirit in that element. And shoot forward from 2 idiots in a garden messing about in London. 8 years later, or 10 years probably now. We have Vicky running this research program with Heriot-Watt University. I think we're almost 2 years into it now, or 18 months. And essentially, we've been looking at all sorts of yeasts that haven't to date been used in whiskey production, and seeing what exciting flavors we can derive from that. Because if you take your grain, your raw material, you put the yeast in, and that's essentially picking out the esters from that grain. It's and every yeast behaves in a different way, creates different flavors and characteristics. Mm-hmm. We had our first. Vicky guards her samples that she creates very jealously and doesn't really allow us near them. But we finally got to sort of sniff our way through the first 20 new makes she'd made, all tiny little batches of whiskey. I think it was just at the end of last year, and the diversity and range and complexity of the different samples was just so exciting to behold. And we're not the only distillery doing this. We've seen other people are getting into yeast as well, and it's a really exciting frontier for whiskey. Yeah. So that's Vicky sort of forging what will, in many years, hopefully when I still have some hair on my head, become the Port of Leith single malt whiskey. And actually, the more we get into it, the more we see how much more there is to learn, and the scope for experimentation is massive.
Yeah. And so presumably the research that's carried out, is that retained by Heriot-Watt, and effectively the industry will have access? It will form research for the industry, will it? Is that?
Sure. Well, so the research is carried out under something called a knowledge transfer partnership, which sort of connects universities to companies like ourselves and helps leverage their expertise. In essence, the research is our property, but we intend as a company to open source it. It's one of the key values of our company going forward, is that we always want it to be completely open, and open, experimental, and educational. So. We do intend to share it with others, let them take what we've learned, see what they do with it, etc. And if we help enhance and grow the Scotch whisky industry, even in a tiny way, because we are tiny, that's only good for all of us. So yeah, that's our intention for it in the future.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. Great. And so obviously you're in the you mentioned the industrial estate right now. You're sort of temporary, although it's it's going to be a few years you'll be in it. But you're building the Port of Leith Distillery. We've seen plans. I mean, can you tell us a bit about the unique location and the construction of your new distillery?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with the location, Scotch whisky is just the most horrible industry to get into. I should say it's a wonderful industry, but it's really, really hard to get into. The barrier to entry is massive because you have to produce, you need a lot of cash up front to buy all your equipment, etc. And then you have to wait years and years before you can sell anything. So the answer that Paddy and I came up with many years ago was, well, we're from Edinburgh. There isn't a single malt whisky distillery. There wasn't in Edinburgh. And if we could find the right location, we could get lots of visitors in the early year, and they would get us through to when we can sell our whiskey. And so that was the initial sort of plan in our head. And it took us a very long time to find a site. We found sites, we lost sites, we found investors, we lost investors. Finally, we got a site, and it took us about 2 to 3 years to actually secure it fully. But the site has been the making of our business, because the location in Leith, which at one point was the epicenter of the Scotch whisky industry, is right next to the Royal Yacht Britannia. So currently almost 400,000 visitors a year come all the way from the centre of town down to that ship to visit it, and our distillery will be right next to it.
Handy.
So for two new entrants coming into the industry, trying to raise investment, being able to show to investors, look, we've got this great location, and that should get us through to when our whiskey is ready. That was really the making for us.
Yeah.
But the thing about that location is it's incredibly small. It's it's a postage stamp site. So we very quickly realised we're going to have to build a very different type of distillery here and go up. Yeah. So we're building the first vertical distillery in Scotland. There is another one in the world in Sweden, Mackmyra. But ours is going to be like no other you've ever seen, essentially. And we you can see we're building a vertical distillery because we've got a very small site. But we did always want to build something that was utterly distinctive and different to anything you've seen. We love the Scotch whisky industry. It's founded upon incredible heritage and tradition, but we're not old, we're new. And so we said, our building should reflect that, and we want the building to become, if it can, almost a modern face for the Scotch whisky industry, and reflect that in the architecture. So that's what we have, a very, very distinctive building that is currently at long last under construction. So we got to site essentially back in December last year. Obviously, we had to shut down for the COVID-19 crisis. We got back onto site a few weeks ago because we were able to start piling, which involves very few people, and you're able to socially distance very easily. And piling, creating the substructure for this 40-meter tall building, was by far like in most construction projects, that's the riskiest bit, because you're dealing with what's under the ground, and really you can do all the surveys you like, you never really know what's under the ground. Along with everything else, I haven't really been sleeping much because of that. But we finished it the day before yesterday, which is a week and a half ahead of schedule, and it all went really well. So we're exceedingly relieved to get through that bit.
Oh, that's good.
But there's a lot more fun and games still to come. Building a vertical distillery. It basically, I've come to see, I was saying to this about this the other day, it takes a kind of reckless naivety to get yourself in this position, because if you ever really truly understood what it involves to build a vertical distillery, you would never go near it. It's incredibly complex.
And I imagine vertical is one thing, but on the edge of literally on the edge of a pier, of a port, is like, that's another challenge, I imagine.
It is, yeah, indeed. Well, we've got the salt water to contend with as well in terms of the material, and we have to spec for that. The verticality, I mean, it has a certain elegance in terms of the production process, because we intend to be able to use the gravity to pull the process through. And certainly for visitors as well, it will be an experience like no other in the way, like, I've done a virtual reality tour of the building, and it is extraordinary. Like, you know, looking up at these massive washbacks suspended above your head and down to the stills below you. It's going to be an incredible space. But the design of all of that, the pipe work, the position of everything. I mean, the team of experts we have poring over that, and how we're going to build it, the complexity of actually constructing it is extraordinary. So yeah, it's been quite a project, and it's going to be quite a remarkable thing once it's finished. I mean, more than anything else, actually, possibly the most complex bit of all has been the service yard. It's the most least sexy bit of any distillery. It's so important. You know, we have to get lorry loads of grain delivered every day. We have to get sort of waste products taken off. We need a boiler in there, a chiller that's going to have to sit on front. It's like the most overly considered patch of grass in Edinburgh, possibly in the history of time. You know, the amount of time we spent poring over that little bit of land. But you know, it is going to create, I think, what should become a quite remarkable landmark, I hope, for Edinburgh. So so it is. I'm sure it'll be worth it in the end.
Oh yeah, I feel like I can't wait to come already. It's like, how long do you think? When's it going to be?
Yeah, well, so as of today, you know, and every time I tell someone when it's going to open, you know, a few weeks later that information's out to date. But as of today, it looks as though we'll open around October 2021.
Wow, so that's not that long. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling myself. It's not that long, and then, you know, before you know it, my child has grown up into a teenager, and you know, it's going to open any day now. I tell you that. But yeah, you know, now that we're in construction in earnest, things have to move quickly because you don't want delays. So,
I mean, we followed the journey quite closely on social media, and every time there's a post or a little sneaky video goes up showing a bit of progress in the site, we're like, oh look. Even we've been enthralled and excited about what's been happening.
It was that thing that we got to site, and that was so exciting, and then not much really happened for a while because you're sort of you're clearing the site, you're looking for the utilities and stuff like that, and then of course coronavirus came along. But now I think in the coming months,
start to see it going up.
Exciting things will start to emerge. Yeah, exactly. So I'm, you know, for a long time I wasn't even going down there because there wasn't much to see. But these days I go down at least once a week to sort of like even these piles, which, you know, they're 16.5 meter sort of bits of steel that are going into the ground.
Yeah.
Not much to look at from above ground, but even now I'm going, oh, look at those beautiful piles. Aren't they just exquisite?
Yeah.
Quite right.
Yeah.
And what are some of the biggest milestones you would say, Ian, that, you know, you as a business owner and sort of the gin and the distillery, what would you say are the big milestones that you've achieved
so far?
Well, I guess, yeah, you know, looking back, I guess we have achieved things so far. You know, you always sort of, as you climb the mountain, you don't really often look back down. You just keep looking towards the summit. But without a doubt, Linden Lime has been far more successful than we ever anticipated it would be. I mean, who would look at the gin industry in the state it was in 2018 with so many different amazing brands out there and think that you could make a dent in it? But it has. Yeah. And it's really outperformed our expectations, and that is incredibly exciting. You know, because you know you have to have a certain degree of belief in yourself to go down this route. But you know, the proof of the pudding is in the consumers buying, and the reaction has been sensational. So that has been very exciting for us.
Yeah,
I think also. It sounds boring, but getting our land deal over the line was the biggest existential threat to us as a business. You know, we could have spent 7 years of our life trying to make something happen that could have fallen through.
Yeah.
And getting that bit over was the last thing that could really have stopped us. And so that was an enormous milestone for us. And Paddy and I were feeling pretty good after that. But I think genuinely the best thing we've created and the most valuable thing to us as a company is the team. Like we spent a very, very long time recruiting people because when you're a small business like ours, every single person counts so much. And you know, we're now in a situation where Paddy and I, you know, we've still been raising investment, or we go out, we have to meet exporters or whatever. We now have a company that we can leave behind, and these guys just make it work. And not only that, but they are bringing the same level of energy, imagination and creativity to this business as we are ourselves. That I think for me is by far the most exciting thing here. That to have, from two idiots, as I say, to now like 6 people who know what they're talking about is incredibly exciting to see. And by the time that distillery opens, there'll be 40 people in our company.
Wow.
And it's our mindless ambition to not stop there. So there's people, I guess.
Quite right. And I mean, as you say, to create employment on its own is a fantastic achievement, to be able to, take people on from the local area, but to actually create that, that genuine team, and hopefully, I'm sure, people that will stick with you, that are part of the journey and part of the long-term story. That's exciting.
I think particularly as a startup, you offer people opportunities that they'll just never have elsewhere, because they have to do so many different things, and the level of responsibility they can have and the rope you can give them is far longer than another company could normally do. I hope that's something that we can maintain throughout our existence. It does become harder as you get bigger,
of course.
But right now, we have exceedingly qualified graduates who one day are sort of selling gin to France, and the next day are bottling gin, and then the next day are mopping the floor or coming into a design meeting on the distillery. The level that sort of
flexibility, almost
speaking to every aspect of the business, I think is particularly exciting.
And I guess as well for your team, Ian, it gives them a fantastic insight into different aspects of the business, rather than just being specifically pigeonholed into maybe only doing one task. That crossover obviously gives them more opportunity to learn and develop as well, which
absolutely
I think is fantastic.
The real danger is that they go off and start their own one after this, because they'll learn everything. But to be honest, the company I used to work for, which was Robeson Wine in London, it was a very similar environment, and actually there was a long history of people leaving that. I don't know if you've heard of the wine magazine Noble Rot, which there's now a very famous restaurant. That was my colleague Mark, who went off and started that. Another colleague, 2 other colleagues started their own wine business. And our boss, Cliff, there's nothing he liked more than to see people go off and do that. And, if in the future employees from the Port of Leith Distillery go off and create the brands of tomorrow, I think we can say job done. That
exactly. They've been inspired by their time with you guys. So absolutely. No, that's been really, really insightful. And, we knew a few things, but we've definitely picked up a few new things as well. So thanks very much for taking the time. It's obviously a busy time for you guys. Long may it continue. So we'll leave things there. But thank you very much.
Not at all. Great to talk to you. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Ian. Bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Okay. We leave Ian busy in the distillery with the team, who are obviously just absolutely up to their eyes. I mean, I know they've been doing deliveries around Edinburgh and
hand sanitizer
which we didn't even talk about, but that was really, really interesting, and so excited to see that distillery.
Ian's always really fun and honest, and just
you can tell he's very, very chatty and very warm sort of guy. So but no, thank you very much for joining us again. As always, keep an eye on social media. We will be promoting who we're talking to in the coming days and weeks. So take care.
Thanks for watching again. Take care and stay safe. All the best.